Welcome back to SideQuest IX, Final Fantasy IX, episode 19, our ultimate episode. Did not make it to 20 this time. Back with me, my perennial party member and contemporary and contemporaneous and always cooperating companion, Wes Schantz. Nice to see you, Wes.
Oh, here we are. Yeah, I know. We should have done at least like a multiple of the number nine, probably.
We
Something
got
like
to
that.
19 though. I mean, for Dante that would work. Just having nine in the title. So like often cantos with nines in them can be Beatrice's.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like 29, for example, is very special in Purgatorio.
Okay.
But it could be 19 in Inferno. But yeah, so not a multiple of nine. We're just one after that. But nine is in it, and in some ways, yeah, instead of IX, it's I9, 1-9. Yeah, Arabic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay.
if we kind of spin it around a bit. But so last time we talked about sort of our false final trinity. The Silver Dragon, Garland, and Kuja. And I think I had those mixed up last time. I think I had Garland after Kuja, which would seem to make sense, but is not how things go. Well, now we went back to the Black Mage Village, and then we fought about 1,000 looking silver dragons, which you suggested might be Eidolons. Went through a very interesting looking portal above the Aoife tree and find ourselves in Terra. Terra is itself well, and we saw the village of the deep genomes already, but now where we're seeing is sorry, Terra's been destroyed. Okay, let's put it
Yeah.
let's get that straight. The place that we are now is a place constructed from our memories. So says the disembodied Garland. And so I'm going to just try and say what
Hmm.
I saw before we interpret too much, because there are two or three, I think, big issues that require some interpretation that I don't think I quite have entirely straight yet. So I think this conversation will be very useful for parsing some things out. But the first place we end up in is in some ways the final castle, finally, of the game and of the PS1 and the Final Fantasy series under Sakaguchi's reign on the PS1.
Hmm.
And so this is truly, in some ways, final, in a way that everything that was final before was anti-penalt, like you said, not or sorry, penalt or anti-penalt in that case,
Hmm.
as it were. Final Fantasy VII, then 8, then 9, I guess. But this is truly final in a lot of different ways. And so the castle is itself a representation of our characters' memories in a way directly analogous to what we suggested Ultimecia's castle might be made of. The memories and expectations and archetypes that the player brings to the
Hmm.
notion of like a haunted final castle, right? Like it's like a Mario Boo's Bowser final castle and its gothicness. But this is literally made from memory, and so it would seem to be sort of a callback to all of the Final Fantasies before. And so that is not left to the imagination at all. And in this place of memory, Zidane is taught about the universal nature of memory, and this is something I wanted to ask you about. I do have some images here. I know that you've got some dialogue there, so we can look at the text as it were if we need to. But
Yeah.
something that Zidane learns from Garland, still disembodied, is that he has other people's memories. He doesn't. It's just that memory is not purely subjective in this reality. And I can't say world because Terra and Gaia are becoming one, and we're in this strange memory space that is in some way within or accessible from within Gaia. And so a very strange ontology is
Yeah.
happening here. I need some super string theory to understand it, or maybe some fiction theory. Um, but maybe they're not so different from each other. But so memory, every memory that someone has, so somebody does have to perceive something. So there is if a tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound, no. But if somebody sees it fall in the forest and then dies, that memory is in some way encapsulated by the crystal. I guess, because from this place Memoria that we're in, we go into a place of like silvery, sort of green, like the life stream from Final Fantasy VII. This crystalline reality, the crystal world, the source of
Mhm.
all being, we're told it is. And this crystal world is where I guess the memories of all things continue to exist. And so not only are there souls in these worlds, and souls can be in a cycle of souls, and souls can also be used to create animate beings in corrupted ways, like the black mages, for example, by means of the Aether tree.
Mhm.
Um, but we're also told that there's that memories are eternal to some extent, and that there is a source of being, which is its own world. Um, and okay, this is where we've gotten to, and then we face three actual final bosses: Death
Yes.
Guys, Kuja, and Necron. And the only thing I mentioned at the beginning of this, besides the fact that they're all extremely difficult, Death Guys in particular, I think being very, very tricky, but then also Necron. But obviously they are death themed final bosses. Death Guys and Necron, like necrosis, which is the act of dying,
Mhm.
or dying flesh, in Greek. But also, nego negare in Latin is to die. And so both of their names are etymologically related to or directly mean to die.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then there's of course Transkuja right in the middle there. I guess the last thing I would mention is that Necron has a philosophy of non-being where he says that Kuja finally figured out, and therefore being has figured out that it exists only to die, and that the only way to be without the fear of death is to not exist. But then when he is defeated, thinks that the will to live has been shown to be so profound by these individuals that actually his initial point doesn't no longer stands. Because
Right.
yeah,
And he says that he can't be destroyed, right? As long
right,
as life
he
and
can come
death,
back
he's
like
he's part
Garland.
of this. Yeah. And in Japanese, his name is Eternal Darkness, or that's like the literal translation. They don't usually go for literal translations. It seems like they either just transliterate or change things. Kuja's name, interestingly, apparently is a uh, element of Hindu cosmology that's brought in here for the planet Mars. And so some
Says
of the meanings there, like, could be born of Earth, or just like a reference to the red planet, the warlike planet in uh, Greco-Roman mythology. And yeah, and then the Death Guys, yeah, that name seems to refer to it's you know it's a disguise or um, a trick of a vision, like what you see is not what you get kind of thing. So yeah, I agree that that one was pretty difficult. That seems to like stand in place of the dragon. It has a kind of dragon look to it. It's like the ultimate example of that. So I wonder about that being his like ultimate summon or something like that that he's consciously able to perform. And then he has his ultimate spell, and it seems like that is what allows this Necron figure thing to manifest. Um, it does seem like we're supposed to be thinking about these sets of three bosses in a row and somehow like putting them against one another and comparing them. And so if you look at the order, Kuja, of course, is the linking figure in the two, but he's in a different form now. He's the trans Kuja, and he's got that central location of being like the boss that you think you're headed to fight, right? Garland was that in the Pandemonium stage of Terra, and now Kuja here in this crystal world, or this world of memory and such. And then you have this like bonus boss at the end who was Kuja before and now is this Necron that comes out of nowhere that seems to represent the nowhere, the nothingness, the you know, the absence of all existence. And it's curious that it speaks and has a kind of will, but that seems to be almost like transferred from Kuja in his worst moments there. Um, and the the battle takes place in almost like a Colosseum type, you know, cylinder, but it's floating, and there's a bunch of eyes that are winking, opening, shutting, which has been a symbolic, uh, like,
Leitmotif throughout.
yeah, exactly, right. And I think that there has to be something about the self referential nature of this game, right? The way that it's looking at itself and looking back on itself. And so you can picture like some kind of, you know, uh, some sort of, what's the word for the ultimate prison, the panopticon.
Panopticon.
Yeah, yeah, you've got one of those going on, right? Because it's like all
And
the
Necron
eyes.
doesn't have any facial expressions. He
Yeah,
has
he's
like a knightly, he's anthropomorphic, like
yeah,
Goro has crossed arms and then arms, but like his face is like a knightly helm. It's
yes.
blank, right? It's got angles like it's got, it's like an attractive blank face because he's got nice cheekbones, but that's like all you see, so it's a well-structured blank
Yeah,
face.
yeah. It's
Um,
awesome. I mean, he looks pretty cool.
he does.
Um,
He's
and
ripped, kind of like other savior figures. It's interesting in the representation of a final boss, right? Like to
yeah,
him, he takes on an anthropomorphic form. He does speak to us. One thing I wanted to mention, part of your analysis is in that space, that sort of Colosseum outside of time space. It reminds me a lot of Super Smash Brothers when you fight the Master Hand, and there's like
yeah,
crazy psychedelic lights. Like it's no longer like a stable space. It's an in-game space, right? It's a
yeah.
liminal. It's become a liminal space. Is that he does dignify you by pulling you up onto his level. And so, kind of like with Kefka, kind of like with Sephiroth, there is a moment that indicates that there is still a wide difference in power.
Yes.
That whatever is happening between you is in some ways symbolic and theatrical. Um, and because
Oh, very much so.
he is allowing this. He and also I'd like to mention that, like you said about the difference between nothing and this strange Colosseum fight space and the crystal world. Well, two things. The ninth sphere of heaven for Dante, and this is the same with Avicenna in the Middle Ages, the great Persian philosopher, as well as Aristotle, um, is called the primum mobile or the crystalline heaven, like the
Oh,
crystal
yeah.
heaven here. And something interesting about that is the Christians will later add the Empyrean, including Dante, but the crystal heaven is the beginning of all space and time, so it is itself like sort of an invisible like crystal, invisible, in some ways empty, but is the fastest moving. And so, in some ways, stationary because it moves so fast that its movement can't even be seen. The first motion of all existence is a physical explanation of why there is existence by Aristotle in his physics, that there is an eternal motion that is not subject, that creates time by its very existence and never stops because it's not bound by any single body. And so just something interesting about there being an origin of existence where all memory exists. All memory exists, you might sound sort of like an afterlife or a heaven, right? Like where the
Hmm.
shape or the memories of people go, where something is housed that no longer has agency in the world. Is that and this is going to be sort of a big point, depending on what one believes about the beginnings and the ends of existence in general, but also one's own personal existence, there might be a crystal world or a crystalline heaven or nothing
Hmm.
in that space. And so what we see here is at the very least a profound representation of three different profound representations of what that space of beginning and end of life, capital L,
Hmm.
and life, your own L is here, which you again, just to bring it back to the life cycle of a creative director of a series in its current form and iterations. Um, is showing the analogy, at least the profound analogy between how one lives and what one aims at, Kuja, and nothingness, for example, Zidane and life, and how that connects not just with our heroes, but perhaps with ourselves between our own personal life and the universal life
Mhm.
of or the the cosmic level of existence.
Oh, for sure. I mean, so this is like the life stream again,
Right.
Redux, let's go back to that. Like, forget about eight, although
Yeah.
there
Oh,
are
yeah.
many
Yeah.
parallels, right? But let's jump back over eight to get to seven and
Of
spin
course.
that idea out. But I was going to say, so on the Colosseum shape thing, we have seen a lot of that spiral imagery, but we've
Yes.
seen a
Yes.
space very like this in Madain Sari, right? That temple wall structure that's still there with its roof gone is almost a dead ringer, with the exception of, the eyes are instead the depictions of the different eidolons, right? And so it's significant to me that it's a kind of distorted image of that space where we have this final battle take place. Um, and the setup to this fight, right, is that half of your characters give their essence or their power, their life energy to the other half of your characters, right? They take some sort of orb of light and bequeath it to the ones who you select to take part in this final battle. And so although they've all been wiped by the Ultima attack, half of them are going to get back up and be fully healed up and ready to go for this final fight, right? And so I think maybe this is the only time you can choose someone other than Zidane to be in the party. Like, he doesn't have to take part, I
Oh,
think.
really? Oh, wow. Very interesting.
I could be wrong about that, but I think that you can choose any of these characters. Um, and certainly, uh, the kind of thing that you're talking about, the individual life and then the general life, is in some way being represented there, right? Like, the same goes for the cycling of souls that we've been seeing over the course of the game. That's kind of the purpose of all of this conflict, is to interrupt that flow, hijack it, and turn the world into a different kind of it's like, instead of being itself, it's going to be this vessel that's just filled with the souls from another world. Um, yeah, and I think something about the eidolons and their role throughout is also being conjured up there. Um, so the way that you know, you find these crystals throughout the game, right? Each one is a different color, and it seems to be kind of able to teach, or certainly in terms of the mechanics, it powers up the summon spells. So those, like, little crystals, you also have them in your abilities that you can set on each of the characters, right? And those are kind of interchangeable as well, right? You can move them around, shift them around. Most characters can learn most abilities and this and that. So yeah, there's something about, like, um, the the crystallized form of each of these things, the way that it is taken up and actualized by each of the characters, and then the way that that can sort of be, like, transferred or handed off to the next generation, or to a companion, to something like that, right? I feel like all of that is kind of being evoked in the just the weird sort of out of nowhere final battle that is somehow perfectly fitting for these Final Fantasy games. It always happens.
That's really interesting because it makes me think that a lot about Mako and what materia is being condensed life stream that then gives power, and life stream is itself the sort of residual soul of souls that return to the planet after having been individuated as life forms. But so if Eidolons are some sort of like condensed memory that gives power, that makes me think that the Invincible, and sort of an interesting name for that, for
Mm,
a dying civilization, and its taking of souls and then giving that soul power to Kuja is like a false crystal
mhm,
in some ways. And so there's a connection between souls and the memories that they continue to inhabit and a space that allows them to continue to exist, and the power that that can confer into
Mhm.
an individual. And I mean, we've even seen Rama can still have a personality and take form
That's right.
from his. So he has a really well defined, almost agent memory, right? Like almost like Orin in Final Fantasy X, like an or Seymour, spoilers, but like an unsent.
Yeah.
And but so these angry memories that empower trance Kuja, particularly Braun. So
Mhm.
getting, again, a little psychoanalytic with it. One could understand how they, like Kuja, could reinforce his perspective. And with, the greatest power that's ever existed, which is them plus Kuja in this moment as this artificially super enhanced summon, basically are capable of themselves summoning the
Yeah.
principle of non-existence. And them all, because it's not just Kuja, it's these angry souls from
Mhm.
Madain Sari, from Lindblom, from Alexandria, all these wronged beings that have been enslaved, like Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat, and are pissed, are now we're totally happy to help Kuja, but one could understand how them, given the nature of their existence, pulled away from, the natural cycle of souls, like the even worse than like dying in outer space, right? Like it's like you're in a place with a cosmology with a soul. To have the soul, which has an eternal existence, get pulled out is eternal suffering, is
Yeah.
terror, is something beyond my conception, even though I study hell professionally. Um, but that's an admission I make, and which is
Yeah.
why the conception is endlessly fascinating to me. It's something I've never stopped thinking about, and never will. But it it's their force and possibly their will that allows for the Colosseum of Necron. And I should make a quick correction. He has like a more of um blotchy face. He does have lips. What is it that I'm thinking of? It is there's a certain sort of psychological test with ink blots. It's
Oh, Rorschach?
the Rorschach test. You're right. The
Yeah,
name
yeah,
of and there's a character from Watchmen. He has like a Rorschach looking face, as it were, with
yeah.
like sort of a halo, typical bombastic final boss. A little bit angelic. He does seem to have two rings. He has these two horizontal circles around him, as well as two encircling his legs. So two are vertical, two are horizontal. Very interesting imagery there. But all that goes to say is that Necron might, given the force and power of Kuja and those souls as well, and the degree of anger that they all feel, Kuja at losing his existence, them at being so terribly abused, literally raptured out of the cycle of existence by this evil, alien force that wanted to use them for no good in order to destroy their own people. Um, I think that might be part of what gave the necessary power, or made a summon of a being like Necron's caliber possible.
Mhm.
If anything were going to do it, it would be the application of pure despair and hate by this most powerful being in existence, informed by the power of many, many, many souls, which is like giving him, I don't know, the power of 50 summons or whatever it is.
Some threshold is reached for sure. It's like, well, it's also the intent that he has is not to destroy a city
Right.
or even a world, but the source of all
To deny
memory.
existence,
Like,
to negate,
yeah.
Uh,
The final move, the most dangerous move, I think, um, that is possessed by this Necron guy
Grand Cross.
is the Grand Cross, right? And this is the cosmic sort of thing where it looks like you've got four planets, or maybe it's the moons and the planets. They're arranged in an X shape, and it zooms out to let you see that happen over the surface of the planet itself.
Supernova, his version, but
And th
much
and
worse.
then well, so yeah, it's all the various status effects, and it's the devil of this game, which is the RNG, right? The thing that makes all the parts of this game bad that are bad is that. And so it's like you just kind of roll the dice. Maybe it'll instantly kill some of your characters. Maybe they'll just be miniaturized or
Yes.
asleep or frozen or fire or what. So
Sounds
that
like
is
that
definitely
happened to
the
you, my
scariest.
friend. I want to hear about your experience because I have all too much to tell about it getting messed up. I got messed up in every possible way being on the level. And I think
Well,
I
and the
already
funny
kind of talked about that, but I want to hear your experience.
I mean, the part of this that's bizarre to me is that I read somewhere, I forget where, that Hades was going to be the final boss. And
Mm,
for whatever reason, it was switched to be the hidden boss, which is in that underwater section of Memoria as you're going through.
mm.
And anyway, but Hades's move in FF7, at least, was to do that, was to do all the various status effects at once.
Ah,
On the and so there's a kind of like vestige of that there. Um, I think that the way that they structured this game was to have everything have way less HP. Like
yes.
the bosses don't have that many hit points actually,
Yes.
and yet to be able to hit quickly and to hit hard in ways that you can't really protect yourself against all the time. And so
Yeah.
it ends up being a bit of luck of the draw who can go quickly enough to do an insane amount of damage to the other person, right? And so in my case, yeah, I went with my strategy of haste, regen, and then I added auto potion for good measure because that takes a long time to animate,
Yes.
and so it just lets you heal and heal. Um, I think that it got me with Minnie on Zidane, with the heat thing on Aiko. So then her next turn she killed herself,
Uh-huh.
but she had auto life on, or somebody had auto life on, so it was all right. It didn't matter too much. Um, Freya, I think, was jumping at the time, so Freya didn't get hit by it, which was
Nice.
awesome.
That's a great
If
jump.
I remember. And then Steiner, he was like maybe put to sleep and frozen and something. He got like three different, maybe silenced, which doesn't really matter. So it wasn't a big deal. Like nobody got the instant death. Um, it did take out my characters kind of one by one, but at very, disparate intervals. And so I was able to heal them up, and it wasn't that bad of a fight compared to some of the harrowing experiences. But uh, but yeah, but that's because I was prepared. I was at level 55 or so with Zidane, and everyone else was like around 50, and so they were okay. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think you were a little bit underleveled and probably didn't take on the optional Hades boss and synthesize some good stuff from him. And no, no.
No, no, I didn't quite make the time for all of that, but I did eventually make it through. But yeah, I each battle I'd get hit by like three or four grand crosses. Like it would have to like the only
Oh
way I
no.
got through Death Guys, Kuja, and uh, the final one is like I would have to be on the edge of despair with like one character left and then slowly rebuild
Hmm.
from that and hope that Necron spent three or four turns buffing himself slash like casting moves like blue shock which cannot kill you even though it can reduce you to one
Hmm.
HP. If he does that a couple times in a row, it's actually kind of nice because it's going to give you time to cure everybody, and it's impossible that anybody would have been killed from that. What's tough is when he hits you with a shockwave and then hits like a thundaga on everybody immediately after that with some sort of double, some boss double cast that he gets.
Yes.
But yeah, I would get so if I were lucky with one Grand Cross, it's like I might 3 turns later get another Grand Cross. And so I had to really, 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 uh, like with the card game, rely on RNG and be like, even though I had three characters, all four had auto regen, three had auto life, maybe all four. None had auto haste though, and that becomes, I think,
Yeah.
a pretty big issue. Um, and right, like so Grand Cross not only did it towed me, light somebody on fire, free somebody, it would routinely hit two or three characters with death.
Mhm.
um, which was pretty rough too. And
That's
so,
no good.
especially if the other character is then confused, and then it's just like, I had some moments where it was like, okay, all hope is lost. Um,
So
so
you
I was really
can,
feeling Necron.
I mean, you can leave the dungeon. Like it is all about the time you want to put into this, because at the final little orb save point
Yes.
thing, it's like you can teleport out, and by the time you go out and go back through the whole dungeon, you'll gain, I don't know, 5 to 10 levels probably, because everything gives so much experience. Um, you of course could go, complete a few side quests, find various accessories that cut down the damage that some of these spells will do to you, or even absorb the damage as healing you. Uh, there's lots of options to you, but if you're determined to just keep rolling the dice, you can do that too, right? It's almost like gambling at a certain
It is like gambling, and I mean that's part of playing a game like this in this way. Whereas you can go in over prepared and have RNG be limited, but there is a
point.
way to play it with really, really high stakes where you just need the game to play in a certain way, and then you can win. And why I played it like that is that I beat Kuja with Steiner's 9,999 regular attack during trance,
Yes.
helping me out for the second half, like 3 turns in a row. I did 30, I did 29,998 damage and
Yeah.
took him out. But then I did not have that available for Necron like I desperately needed. And Zidane was just far enough away from trance to not
Uh-huh.
be as useful as he could be. But like, so, right. If I wanted to it would have been pretty easy to like just kind of grind, but I really just didn't feel like doing that. And go get better items, but I would have had to fight Kuja again, which I really didn't want to do. And I kept losing to Necron, but because I'm on this port, I could start right in front of him, and I was really nervous I would never beat Kuja again. Um, unless I leveled up a bunch. So it was like
Mhm.
either I can try and really play the odds and beat this in a really frustrating hour or two, or I need to go put like an actual solid amount of couple hours and like running back and forth. But in some ways, I just couldn't bring myself to do that. Um, Even though, right, the the characters or the enemies that you fight in Memoria give you like 10 to 14,000 experience, which in
Yep.
1 or 2 battles levels you up. It would only take like 10 battles
Yeah.
to get up something like 10 levels. And I would be casting all my strongest magic the entire time, so they go pretty fast. But right, yeah, it would have been very possible, and I think that's very Final Fantasy IX as well.
Mhm.
But I think something else that's very Final Fantasy IX is that, as like you said, is as good as you can get, you really can't get as OP as in Final Fantasy 7 or 8.
I think so.
In 7 and 8, you can, except for 8 does have one nasty RNG bit to the final battle where Ultimation can just destroy your junctioned most important
That's
magic.
true. That's true.
But if you're OP enough, you can just house her so quickly that that's probably not going to happen with lots of, like limit, Lionheart limit breaks
Yeah.
uh and like super, super jump, Eden 255 boosted, 40,000 damage, or like Knights of the Round with 7. Like if you have Knights of the Round in Final Fantasy 7, fighting the final boss is not difficult. Even though he's made more difficult if you use Knights of the Round on the first of those 3 final bosses in Final Fantasy 7. Um, they it's just a joke, right? Like Emerald Weapon and Ruby Weapon are tough, but not Sephiroth.
But partly because they have so much dang HP, right? It's a Yeah. I just think everything is kind of scaled a little bit more in favor of yeah, not having to get to level 99 and put in an absurd amount of hours into this game. Like you can just kind of get lucky, and there is like final hidden bosses and stuff, right? So
Yeah.
there's Hades, which is in this final dungeon in the underwater area. He's not super difficult, really. Um, but then there's also the Ozma, orb thing, which you have to do the entire Chocobo quest, go to Chocobo Heaven, and then go and find the Eidolon Cave where Ozma's hanging out. And that one, I think if you complete all the friendly monsters, including the one that actually takes the diamond from you, not the gimme cat that takes the diamond, like I think if you do that, it's kind of like that portion of Ku Palace where you do something and it affects the boss in such a way that you can actually like reach it with attacks, not have to use magic. And so, uh, but yeah, I didn't do the Chocobo stuff. I didn't do the the Mognet Central as much as I wanted to. It
Mm.
looked really cool. Like if you look it up, it's got this cool machine that like sorts the mail or something, and the machine is broken down because Artemision has taken the oil that's supposed to help it run, and he's rubbed it all over himself in an effort to make his coats as sleek and shiny as possible.
Oh my
So it's
goodness.
like a little mini version of Kuja, right? Like I'm so glamorous, I will sacrifice the entire universe for
And
me.
and right, it's like the souls, right? Because
Yeah,
it's supposed to be smoothly, but it's getting clogged up.
it's busted. And so you got to get the super slick after you run around and you get all the letters. The final hint is that somebody has the super slick, which is like the oil, and it turns out to be Ruby, the girl from the theater, and she's got it because she likes her hair to look a certain way. And so you get it from her, you take it there, and you fix the machine, and bada bing,
That's
bada
like
boom.
the super soft with the petrified frame. So,
Exactly.
getting clogged
Call
up and getting petrified. These are also themes too
I
that
really thought of that scene in the very end of this game. You're running along this kind of
yeah,
crazy
yeah,
route,
crazy
and
vines
it's
that
like the very first Evil Forest
yeah,
like sequence. Only instead of getting
it's an
caught
evil
like
tree.
Blank, because Blank sucks, you escape, because you're Zidane, and Zidane's awesome.
That's right. Maybe Kuja
Yeah.
teleported you out. It's unclear because he's the one
It's
who
certain
teleported you out of Necron's
exactly,
thing, right?
exactly.
Like, so
Yes.
he, in the very last moment, has a little bit of redemption. I mean, a little bit, right? Because he brought all of this down
Yeah.
on everybody. But I again, when I think of all those souls reinforcing his will, it makes me think less damning of him. Obviously, he is the most damnable agent in existence. I'm not debating that. But he does have a moment of redemption at the very end. Where
Absolutely. Um, I think I think that the sequence of the Memoria castle also it seems to just sort of put everything in perspective, right? Like Kuja ultimately, yes, is the agent in a way, but this has all been kind of building and going on, and he's sort of locks in as a certain kind of cog in this bigger
right, right. For
mechanism,
5,000
right?
years at least,
Ex
there
is
have been designs on Gaia by Terra.
and I think if you zoom out, to the scale of the series as a whole and the way these games are constructed, I think you ultimately have to have sympathy for the agents of evil within each game because they're integral. Like you don't have a game without that. Not this kind of game, right? And so there's the sympathy on that scale as well. Like and the cycling of the progression of ideas, of mechanisms, of themes is kind of inexorable, right, throughout these games. And so I love how this one wraps up. Like as weak as some of the elements are, kind of gets a little shaky there. The final, like the imagery, the boss battles against the four fiends finally take place, right? We kind of wanted to see those back in that section where your party splits up to go to the shrines, but at least we get them here. They're kind of maybe too little, too late, but they're interesting at least to get that. It's a classic FF thing, and you know what your characters are seeing from these memories that are like bigger than themselves, right? Is that yeah, ultimately they are doomed, right? Like that is just the way things go in this universe. And yet they're going to fight on because after all, the player wants to see what happens next, right? That's the core mechanic here. You overcome the obstacle to see what happens, see how things will change, how things will play out, and that curiosity, that that care for the story and for the characters is the what unstoppable force that overcomes the immovable object every time. Uh, so I just love that. I think, you can, kind of get your FF8 moment there where you're like walking all upside down in space, and you get your uh, self-sacrifice moment, which is wonderful with Zidane one more time, like sends everyone else away, like I'm going to do this. And of course, he survives, right? We come full circle with the I want to be your canary play. And we see a lot more of that play, like the actual dialogue is taking place because Ruby is playing the part. She knows her lines, and it just is allowed to play more. Yeah, and then of course the great reveal with the line about "Give me my dagger," right? Uh, and so the name of this character has changed a number of times. You can find out her true name, right? If you go back and you walk in a circle around and around in the Madain Sari temple,
Sarah.
eventually there's a little text that tells you, yeah, exactly, that she's named Sarah, which is the original princess that you rescue in the first Final Fantasy,
Ah,
right? And so there's a name callback with that as well. Um, but her hair has had time to grow, like she is in full queen regalia, and she's just delighted to see Zidane, right? She like pounds him on the chest, and then they sort of embrace, and everyone's cheering. All of the little VVs are there, and we hear Vivi's kind of letter, right, is like playing, not here, but read over it. And it's very moving. Like you think you're starting the game over because the little guy trips and the rat kid comes in, but then he's like, oh, like you don't know who I am. And he explains, but our father told us about you, right? Um, yeah, and so you see each of the kind of like where are they now for each of the characters. It's pretty good. I think you mentioned that Amarant even gets a little accompaniment from Lonnie here at the very
yes,
end, right? That
yes.
was surprising.
Yeah,
She comes
well,
out of
so
nowhere.
I mean, was it surprising given the what happened for every character except for Vivi? And well, so yeah, so I want to talk about this duplication and coupling.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I do also want to mention what you noted here that fours and threes seem to be really important to Final Fantasy, particularly when it comes to like party. Is it a three or a four-person party?
Mm,
And then with the ending, is it three bosses or is it four? In Final Fantasy VII, it's three: Genova Synthesis, Bizarro Sephiroth, Safer Sephiroth. But in six, it's four. There are four areas of Kefka, all right,
yeah.
and eight is four as well. But then we have three again here. Because yeah, eight has what? Three yeah, Ultimatia, Griever Ultimatia, Ultimatia.
Yeah.
She junctions herself unto herself. Not to mention what like the Grand Cross with the four and the four planets
Yeah.
as well, and the rings themselves, the two horizontal, two vertical that surround Necron and his sort of angel of death visage.
Oh,
But I wanted to mention, just bouncing off your point, that the Aoife tree attack at the end being sort of like the petrified forest is again one of these naturalistic slash mythological notions that like an evil Garden of Eden.
yes.
We've talked a little bit about such things. There, Clara with their tornado, but I mean, really, it was the petrified forest in the beginning, the evil forest, I believe it was called.
Mhm.
Um, and then uh right. That there's a sort of Garden of Eden, and tree, forbidden tree element. Like tree of life is sort of what this Aoife tree is, but it's like the opposite. Like it vitiates life or it diverts life. It's an evil tree. It's a weed, really, right? It is
Yeah.
a tree planted by Garland to help regardless of the system, the systematic explanation to help Terra absorb Gaia,
Mhm.
so that then the old wine souls of Terra can be poured into the new wine flask, like material of Gaia slash also the genomes. So like in an Aristotelian way, have their form and print on this matter. But so we get like you said, a then duplication of this evil forest idea, but it's also again like in the same way that Necron is like a perversion of an angel and of like a creator god as a destructive god, and instead of a point of creation like the crystalline world, it's a point of destruction and to destroy this competitive place. This we get this archetype of this sort of heavenly-esque place or place in Dante's Purgatorio called terrestrial paradise with its very, special tree of life, but it stays a negative symbol here.
Mhm.
It's not redeemed. It's not, we don't go back to the evil forest and it become like the green forest or the good forest. Supersoft is used on Blank, but the nature of the forest I think he's just saved, not the forest itself. And so it's interesting here that this, and in context, I understand that this is just like the Invincible, just a tool of Terra that does need to be destroyed, of course, and does need to be rooted out. But it's not turned into a positive symbol. Now, obviously, at the very end, we get this ultimate coupling, which is the creation of the new crystal, which I think is in some ways supposed to, like we talked about last time, indicate this harmonious relationship between the Terrans and the Gaians, and an infusion of the wisdom and whatever remaining vitality there was of the Terrans in with the Gaians who really give the youth and the vitality necessary to give the motive force to this um to this thing. But okay, but that I think is the ultimate pairing off. I would like to hear your perspective on Fratley and Freya.
Right.
He still doesn't remember her, but she does get what she wants? I'd like to ask about that. Vivi dies, but he leaves some written record and his memories, and I think he has 5 kids. Very impressive. Didn't know that was possible. Don't know the mechanics of that. Like, is this from the mist that was left over, or did they? Is there some way to bring mages back to life? I'd love to hear your hypotheses, theories, discoveries on that. Steiner tells Beatrix not to leave, and she stays. It's very romantic. They're coupling, and she stays on for him. Um, let's see. Obviously, we see Zidane and Dagger. What I find interesting about that is, again, we find him playing a different role. He's acting again. We've seen him play so many roles, like even he gets to Hero of Light at the end, right? Fighting against Necron. So that
Yes.
sort of status. But he's been thief, he's been kidnapper, he's been lover boy. And here he gets to like sort of propose to her. But something she does that's very interesting, like you mentioned, she's had time for her hair to grow, and who knows if her face in the party would be happy or sad. Then it starts sad, but it's happy after she cuts her hair, right? She's unburdened. But now she's queen, but as she's running towards him, she very like a baseball player running around running around the bases who doesn't want to be heavy, wants to get rid of those few ounces and knocks off his helmet. She knocks off her crown.
Yes.
And so the significance of that is well, not lost on me. I just wonder what the significance is. It just that in that moment she's wants to be unburdened and just be his, or is that her making a more significant statement? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, it's striking because she seems to, well, she's about to be blocked by Steiner and Beatrix,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
They
No,
put
they
their
have
hands
their
across,
spears, or yeah, right. Yeah.
but of course, then they actually just hold the door open for her. And so I thought that this was something similar to that, where, she is, wearing the crown. This is her role, but even her main protectors realize that protecting her in this moment is not restraining her, but setting her free finally, right? And so she doffs that that crown. Yeah, the bigger deal seems to be when she drops her necklace
Oh,
with the
yeah,
with the
yeah. She
crystal
doesn't
on
go
it, right?
back for that. Wow, that's
She
amazing.
does that. That seems to happen accidentally.
Yes.
Um, Accidentally on purpose. Who knows, right? This is the randomness again. But
RNG.
she accepts it. She doesn't go back for it, and then the crown comes off. It's almost an afterthought, right? It's like, yeah, she's made her choice. Um, and I think, yeah, you're right. Like the way that the crystal function, they they can't stay in a pristine state. They have to be used. They have to be brought together, united, and you know, in that way they they actually serve their purpose or something like that, right? And so the scene that we have after that is Steiner and Beatrix lifting the, the the sword that she had laid down just a minute ago to save the queen, and it sort of is an image of the great big crystal sword in the heart of Alexandria that's been rebuilt, right? So put together. Um, I mean, and then this, I guess the duplication of Vivi again throughout this, he's kind of stood in for the series as a whole for the creation of a thing that could just be churning out copies, but then each of those getting its personality, right? And the way that we see that, we don't see the mechanism of it, literally, but we see that it involves the passing on of knowledge and specifically knowledge about people, right? And the memories that have been formed
Through
in the
writing.
adventure together through writing, yeah, through writing this letter. Um, and so something about preserving a story, right, seems crucial to the self-actualization thing that's happening through these crystals and everything. And uh, I think that we get that with Aiko, of course, was trying to write that letter
Um,
earlier. She was like, you know, writing her love letter and needed Tot to help her with it. Um,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think the play itself, right, which structures kind of bookends the whole thing, is a form of this like this archetypal experience that then is put on by people, and they take on those roles, they play them, and they adjust, they adapt, they do them differently. Um, so yeah, I mean I really like the ending, the different cinematics that come back at the very end as the credits roll are from throughout the game, and so you get a kind of retrospective look at everything that's happened, and you get to see it, almost in the round or something like that. You see it in its full context finally, um, and I think that's yeah really effective. Um, when you end on the end screen, um, it is uh, Sakaguchi, his own, his credit is the very last one. Um, and the Resident Arc folks, they answered someone's question about this where they're like, yeah, but where's the space travel field of stars thing from the endings of other games? It's not there. And they kind of speculate like, to what extent is Sakaguchi aware that this is his last Final Fantasy? It seems like there's some element of that, like that stars thing is like, we're going to the next world, we're going to the next world, and that's in a way finished, right? This era of Final Fantasy is brought to a kind of coda with nine, and the technology and the storytelling and everything is going to be a little bit different from there on out, and his involvement, because he's at the very least shifting attention to making movies, right? But possibly also he's being pushed out a little bit because eight had a certain, success, and seven too, because it was doing a different thing, and nine not so much, maybe because of timing, but whatever, you know, the writing's kind of on the wall for him at that point. So they make a big deal about that. What I'm looking at right now though is showing me that there's actually a blackjack game that can be played. Uh, I don't know why this is at the very end of this,
So you have
but
a card game you actually enjoyed as part of the experience.
there's an actually fun random card game. Yeah, maybe that's it. Um, but apparently that's a thing. So I did not. That's a fun little Easter egg for sure.
Okay, and something else I wonder about the five duplications of Vivi is whether that might also be sort of a snarky hint at the fact that there are going to be so a big part of Square's strategy, Square Enix strategy after Squaresoft, of course, in the merger that I think Scott Sakaguchi unfortunately helped to bring on, given the lack of
Mhm.
success in The Spirits Within as a movie. Um, and maybe the closing of a whole office because of that, is obviously that they remakes. And recently it was announced to break the hearts of Final Fantasy IX fans that Kingdom Hearts is going to get a full remake, but really Square has been largely in the business of like a necromancer revivifying their own old franchises rather than like Sakaguchi with a lot of artistic integrity, consistently moving forward and keeping some elements consistent, but really prizing innovation. Part of Square's strategy now is definitely to be necromancer. I mean, and we see this with many franchises now, including Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, both now being made into new series. Ian McKellen is signed on for the new Lord of the Rings series, and there, as we know, there's going to be a new Harry Potter, I think, on HBO, though it might be on Netflix. And so, that was something that made Square special during the golden
Yeah.
age, during the time that would seem to end with Sakaguchi here. And so it may be the case that actually Vivi's children are individuated and are good products and not just zombified reduplications made for obviously made for as money grabs.
Mhm.
But that is the direction that Square Enix went after this with their next two CEOs, and is the direction they continue to go, and is part of why I think it's wonderful that we see independent developers like the makers of Expedition 33, so that we don't have to pin all of our hopes on our former favorite studios, which to Resonant Arc's credit, they made a point that I think we made some time ago with some data behind it, which is and I think I actually made an academic paper as well, which is that, well, these studios are like a ship of Theseus. And not
Yep.
only do their strategies change, which is, I guess, what I would contribute to their point, that it's the institution can remain consistent with differing players, but insofar as its governing strategy and ethos changes with the CEO, that's what really changes it, besides just the people. And so, yes, from an artistic perspective, obviously having a Uematsu, a Sakaguchi, a Nomura, having towering artistic talents is of massive importance. They're totally non-fungible in a business sense. But having an ethos or a consistent institutional character to help shape people as they come up within the organization in order to produce a consistent product, I think is important as well. And that's something that has also been shifting in Square, so that it's not just that the people change and that there are new people coming in. That's true, but the culture and the telos, even not just the ethos but the end, and therefore how they're going to approach the end through their modus operandi, so I'll have some Latin in with the Greek, has changed as well. And so Sakaguchi was really there at the end of an era in terms of personnel as well as institutional culture. And so I couldn't say that that's what caused the golden age. I think that's what we continue to investigate, and we still have to go through tactics and Chrono Trigger very fast here.
Yep.
Um, but um, but those are two big things that have changed about Square, as it has become Square Enix. Um,
Yeah. I wondered about that with the collision of the two planets also. Like I
right.
was,
Very. Oh
is
wow.
that
Yeah.
Enix?
Yeah.
Because it does still happen. Like they do superimpose, and it seems that in some sense, the genome's presence, Mikoto's presence at the very least, being ensouled. Zidane apparently has a soul. Kuja seems to have actually died finally or something. We don't see him anymore, but at any rate, those souls seem to be on Gaia, right? And in the mix now. And then whatever's powering the mages and allowing them to continue, right? So some of that that transfer does happen, right? And the memories, which is the most important part, clearly abide. So yeah, I mean, in some way the plan works, just not how they thought it would. And and yeah, I like each of the characters can be kind of worked into that overarching framework of like this kind of meta textual reading, I think in interesting ways, right? Because yeah, Aiko is adopted by
She
these two.
adopts them, and
Yeah, more
now
to
she's
the
a
point. Yeah,
princess, right? Like
and
that's
that's beautiful.
two pretty
Uh,
good parents, Sid and Hilda. Uh,
Hilda, especially, and Amaranth, and Lonnie, they seem to be a thing, or kinda, sorta.
yeah, Lonnie's
Um,
following him at least, and
sh
so
she's good. And Quina is cooking,
is
back in
that
the.
I was going to ask you about that. Does that disprove, or I mean, d is that now Quina's job, and the crew that was there in the beginning was not Quina, or was that Quina in the
I
first place? Remember, I made that mistake, but maybe it
No,
was
no.
a mistake.
I think it must be Quinn. I think that it's always Quinn. I think that this
Yeah,
person, this being exists outside of time and is able to phase in and out and has always been in the kitchen and has always been cooking this amazing meal. Um, because if you go back and you see the scene with Kwan, there's like the power of imagination overall, right? That's played up quite a bit there. Um, and yeah, like we know that transferring, you know, memories across timelines and between worlds is a thing. So,
with books,
you
right?
know,
Or with
why,
language or with games.
why
Uh,
not? Why not? Okay, and but then Fratley remains a problem. Like
yes.
I think it's a character who is woefully underdeveloped,
Oh my gosh.
and
Less than
and
ever.
and we never find out what he's been up to or what, if anything, they've been doing to try to recover his memory, right? We know that memory abides. We know that it's out there. We
Mm,
know that there's a possibility of accessing it in some fairly literal ways, but certainly in metaphorical ways, right? Wouldn't it be like Freya's job to like tell him stuff until little by little he assimilates the
mm,
person that he was into the person he is? Like, I just think this is a place where most likely they ran out of time. They couldn't, do justice to that arc that is kind of a just a thing that's introduced and then totally dropped, right? And so at least Beatrix, we see a little bit more from her throughout the story. Like we see her in the cutscenes aboard the Red Rose. She's the one who, like, with Makoto's help, finds the party once they've come out. And Beatrix, yeah, I mean, she's noble to a fault. She's gonna quit, but Steiner convinces her like that they should stay together and both protect the princess, and she agrees, and that's very lovely. Yeah, I mean, her music, I think we haven't talked enough about the music in this game, but her theme is probably the best one, which is funny because she doesn't even join the party. She's sort of this figure who's off stage for most of the game, and yet she is in some ways the most compelling character, and her relationship with Steiner is like the most interesting.
I mean,
Um,
multiple of the characters that were off screen were extremely compelling and needed
yeah,
more development. Fratley, of course, and the fact that Freya gets introduced as, in that very Star Wars fashion at a bar. It's like, oh, you son of a bitch. It's been so,
yes,
it's been so long time. You're still up to your old joint. It's very Calrissian and Han Solo. And then like she's got this really tragic story, and then you get nothing on it
yeah,
except for now they're kind of Book of Job back together at the end, and
mhm,
but he doesn't have his memory, so it's are they really back together? It's a very eternal sunshine of the spotless mind question,
mhm,
and sort of like, okay, well, you know this is a strange, it's very strange, like you say, right? Like they can still, it makes sense that they might still be attracted to each other and could fall in love, but the fact that he doesn't know about their shared history and how deep their relationship actually goes means that they are like years behind where they could be with those memories. Like you are married, I am married, we have both been in our relationships for a long time. We understand that, like a tree, a relationship deepens over time, and that sort of time you can't get back with anybody, because you've given it to somebody, but even to that person. So like even, with my wife to start over immediately with her, even if she like thought I was attractive and wanted to spend time with me, that'd be much more shallow than what we've actually achieved. It wouldn't be an equivalent exchange. It wouldn't be something that, I would actually have to think like, do would I want to, it's not a very romantic way to put it, but in some ways it is. It's like, would I want to start all over with it would be a question I would have to broach with myself, right? Because it's like that question was answered so long ago, and where we are and where we were is now so different from where we would have to be that could I even deal with that?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I might continue to interact with this person that I've been with many years rather than this new person and in front of me. So right, like you said, this is sort of like, again, nature of Freya's underdeveloped relationship with Fratley just kind of thrown in there like it's unproblematic, but it's tremendously problematic. And I think this goes to our question of like, well, when you try and just change the nature of something that has a history
Yes.
and then just make it into something else, Tara's souls are still there. Those memories are still present. It's actually going to be much better that if you acknowledge that there's something there and don't ignore it or repress it. That would seem to be, more like a Kuja or a Garland approach, like in a violent approach rather than a syncretic approach. Because, like you said, Fratley's memories are still there somewhere, even if he doesn't have access to them, particularly in a world that has access to a world called Memoria.
Exactly. Exactly. It's ironic that Kuja is the one who opens the way to that world. I mean, I do think that's kind of interesting. Like it's by going towards the crystal that the path is opened. Now he's going towards it for a bad reason, not to recover memory, but to end all life, right? To be free from fear. And I think the Resident Art guys make a really good point here as well, where they're like, this is a kind of naive, twisted, deformed version of Buddhism when you think about it, right? The attempt to get
Right.
away from fear by annihilating everything is like it's like a kind of ludicrous deformation of like the Eightfold Path or some whatever, like some form of Buddhism that has been mixed with some lines from Star Wars, Phantom Menace, to
Yes.
produce some dialogue there, right? So yeah, so I think that that is a potentially just again a piece of the story that was not able to be fully integrated for reasons of time or whatever. But it when you look at it, like it helps to reflect on the story that we do get, right? And all of the ways that this game makes attempts to bring in lore and world building and the characters within that um, in a really thorough fashion for the most part, right? And thematically, everything pretty much stacks up and works out really well, and the characters reflect interesting aspects of one another and stuff like that. Where I mean, FF8 again is really like you get two characters and their relationship is the entire focus. And it's just a very different kind of thing, right? And all of the aesthetics and gameplay choices and everything else that goes with that, um, it's almost couldn't be more different, right? From 8 to 9. And I think that you have to see them both in their context, in their time, and what was going on then to be able to appreciate what these two games are doing. Because on the face of them, you know, in comparison to 7, 6, 4, for me, those are the kind of the core games in the series. These ones are already the tail end and already a vast decline from especially Chrono Trigger, I think is Square's masterwork, right? So what I see when I look at these games is in that kind of bigger picture, and I think that's the most generous and charitable way to look at them, and I think that the truest ultimately. Um, I'll say again that like we'd have to have the Japanese text, I think, to really dig in, and we'd have to have a better grasp of the code and some of the choices that are made on that level of the game as well that are pretty opaque to me at least. And in order to like get like a truly, you know, definitive analysis of this game. But I feel, I mean, having played through it again, I feel like it does hold up. I feel like it does pose really interesting questions about relationships and about identities and how those things have to bounce off each other continually. Um, there's more here than players of, you know, a 10 or 12-year-old age are going to get on a first play. And in my book, that makes it a great piece of work, right? That you can return to and find new things in. Um, but it's certainly not perfect, and it's certainly not the best or the, you know, iconic game in the series by any stretch. So
I'd say a couple things about that. One is you don't have to be a scholar of everything to be a good scholar of something. And
yeah.
so I don't find myself lacking in any way when I come to these texts, given my multiple PhD level pieces of education when I bring that to here. I think I add a lot to it. So I think that's true with you as well. And something that was once told to me professionally was don't focus on what you lack, focus on what you bring to the table. And I think that, what we bring is something very unique. And there are people out there like Final Fantasy Union who does look at the code. And so that
Hmm.
information is available to us if we find that relevant to our particular, we look at the ludology, we look at the narratology. Yes, those are aspects of the game that people who focus on that can focus on, but is that totally relevant to our analysis? That might add something as like a footnote to, I think,
Hmm.
the like depth of our analysis. We're really getting into the rock there, but we're looking at the characters in the play, not necessarily the theater. That's in some ways a very different sort of analysis. And
Hmm.
so I agree that that is something that can be analyzed and is very useful, and there are people doing that. But I don't think that I wouldn't say that we're necessarily missing that from our analysis. I think our focus is what we have to offer.
Hmm.
And I think it stand, in the same way that when I do Dante studies, there are philologists who just study the language and have these huge footnotes. I read that and I think, this is good too, but the theorists are also very valuable.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right. It's out there. It's being done. That work is out there for sure, for
And
sure.
but I agree that it would be, so okay, if I were to take that as like, as I think it was given very constructively, we could bring somebody in. Not only could we integrate more of that into our analysis, looking at code and looking at language, which I know you're actually actively engaged in learning
Hmm.
Japanese. I know we're close to that. But I would love to learn some from you, but maybe we could bring somebody in who could really help us not only to see that sort of thing, but also the value of that and why that might be value, against my point, why that might be valuable to integrate into our analysis, which that is something about this medium. There's so much to it.
Hmm.
Like you said, it's not just pen and paper, and even books, there's a lot to them, but a video game with a full team and a localization crew, multiple localization crews, but sometimes only one localizer per language in these early games.
Dude,
Uh, yeah.
so on that point, I mean the theme song at the end, right? It's totally different in the Japanese lyrics and the English lyrics because it's
Ah,
musical. And so
okay.
the localizer took a lot of liberties. I mean, throughout the game they do, right? They change things drastically. They put in puns, they put in, you know, callbacks and things. Um, and so in important ways, it is a different text. And then in the song, like the lyrics to the song are significantly, I think, uh, like more, yeah, they're just more ambiguous in the Japanese version of Melodies of Life. So
That okay, so then it's maybe a little bit more like Final Fantasy VIII, because that was the other thing I wanted to comment on, that
mhm.
you're totally right that, like, I mean, you first saw this, I think, very like maybe in the first episode we were talking about this, how this is more of a encapsulating and bringing everything back together, wrapping it all up, summarizing things rather than expanding things.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VIII is the opposite. It was about blowing the scope. out of into insane proportions. But the point you make about the love story, it is annoyingly focused on Squall and Renoa, particularly given Squall's lack of personality, which some people are just not into. But you kind of have to see it compared to Cloud's. He's not so different from Cloud that you might not give him a chance, but he is pretty, bad. But like you discovered while playing, the depths of Final Fantasy VIII are profound, and you can discover them through the many side quests that are a part of the game. But like you also we both discovered, like the cosmology and mythology underlying Final Fantasy VIII does not come through in the main narrative. So not only does it try and tell an expansive 4 disc huge story that even tries to compress time, but it really pushes the boundaries of side quests. And like you said, other characters don't seem to be as well developed as Squall and Renoa, but you can learn a lot about them through side quests like Chrono Trigger. Not quite as well as Chrono Trigger, which I agree with. But I was going to say that, like, just reinforcing my point from earlier, but mentioning yours, something I think gets missed because of this game limiting its scope rather than trying to expand it is uh I mentioned just a couple side characters, but I should say Fratley, Beatrix, Hilda, Sid to a certain extent, though we do get to see a fair bit of him. Lonnie, Ruby, Baku, though again, a little bit more of him. Tot, a little bit, but I'd like to see more of.
He just
Kuja,
drops out, like he's gone.
yeah,
Todd just
Kuja even,
disappears.
and all the Madain Sari characters. Like you really don't
Mhm.
get even like Aiko, like a moment of Aiko's parents talking to her or something. I guess it was too soon or something, or you get a little bit of Dagger Sarah's mom, but right, like, or even Puck, again, a really interesting character that just
Yeah.
disappears after Clara, or even before then with the Sand Scorpion, like because there are these callbacks and right, even Death Guys and the Ant Lion are all callbacks, and Garland is a callback that well, that pushes out, the room for development of the characters that are actually in the work to some extent. Some of them are just not going to be focused on. Um, and and so not a heavy criticism of the work so much as just, yeah, the difference in focus did did make it so that when we played 9 right after 8, certain things were very different. Obviously, I still have to say I think I like 8 more, even though it makes some huge mistakes, like like the orphanage that everybody goes to, that some people just stopped playing after. It's like, wow, that really is a lot to chew on here, but I still just loved it so much, and I
I
really like 9. But yeah.
no, I mean I agree. I think when you look at them in context, they they reflect interesting things about one another, and there's strengths to each. Um, but the kind of story that's told in 8 is so different. It's so unique in terms of the work that you have to do to dig down and find out stuff that's like generally pretty overt in all of the other games,
The
right?
name of the god of the world, for
Things
example.
like this, for
Yeah.
instance. Yeah. Like, um, so I find that intriguing, but I find that just kind of maddening also. So I could never really get into 8.
Okay.
This is the first time I ever played it through, though, to be fair. Like, so I haven't replayed it the way I have the others. Whereas 9 really grew on me as we got into it. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's and so the last thing I'll say, just maybe the way that Zidane survives in his telling is that he wanted to come home to you, so he sang her song, and then she changes it to our song,
Ah,
right? And so I think what really would have been good is if we got like a duet version of this at the end, right?
yes.
Is
Oh,
a version of this that was them singing together and sort of trading stanzas or something. I think
and
that would have
not
really
that
made
like
it.
Celeste song where she's singing by
Yeah.
herself as a recourse to 6, and that, but
Yeah.
yes, right. Oh,
That would have made it. But
you're right.
so, I mean, there's versions of this song out there. I haven't seen a duet version yet, but there's also a number of unreleased tracks from this game.
Oh, really?
There's quite a few, and some of them are pretty good. Like there's a version of Beatrix's song that is kind of like like a sinister version, like an especially sinister
Oh,
Beatrix version,
I like the
which is really good.
I
And
really
there's a
like the
version
crystal
of
minor key version of the harp melody, the intro harp,
yeah,
that is also the Final Fantasy VII, the intro harp melody.
that classic prelude arpeggios. Yeah. So I think that I like the music in 8 as well, but this it has such a powerful mood that it creates that is a kind of atmosphere that I like being in a little bit more. But I still think it doesn't hold a candle to Seven or Chrono Trigger for that matter. Say nothing of Xenogears, which is the greatest. I mean, can't possibly be compared. But so, like,
Well, and we're on to Chrono Trigger for at least about a month here, and
yeah,
so we're going to get to see another one of these masterworks, and see how it
exciting.
compares to 7, 8, and 9, and then to Tactics, and eventually to Xenogears again because it sounded like you were expressing some interest in that, or maybe obliquely maybe I can play that while we play Xeno Saga or Xenoblade. I'm not
Mm.
sure which one of those series is considered more worth playing.
I don't know
Um,
much about them, honestly. Yeah.
I people that like both of those series really, really like them, and that excites me because they're, you know, the part of playing Xenogears originally was the notion that it was supposed to be part of what, like 6 games. The
That's
epic
right. It was going to be
scope
this
of it
whole.
was just absurd for to think of at that point in video games. That somebody, people were, Final Fantasy was just once a year, and to think of in that, to think of a masterwork that was at that level of scope, which is like 6 times more scope than any, game or series of games had ever been, was part of what made the game amazing. It was a towering achievement.
The
But
hubris, yeah.
yeah, right.
It's
No, the hubris,
astonishing.
indeed, right. No, that you could keep a company together long enough to do that, right?
Yeah.
And right. Okay, well, but we'll have more time for that because Chrono Trigger's coming up soon. We're gonna have to play it pretty quickly, so maybe we'll be keeping this schedule, but I guess we'll be deciding since I know the second part of this project is due in about 2 weeks exactly.
Mhm.
And so we're definitely gonna have to do some playing before then. Chrono Trigger can be about a 20-hour game. It's about half what like a Final Fantasy often is.
Yeah. It's compact. It
And
moves quick.
And I guess, well, when we get there, because this is already a long episode, which is amazing because I thought it might be a short episode, but how do you wrap things up? Um, but I'm potentially playing New Game Plus, and I really need to talk that through with you because I'm having a real crisis about it. And I do see
Yeah.
value in it, and people talk about how you can get strong enough to finally go on the right portal at the very beginning and get the ultimate ending, and supposedly Chrono not with Marley is slightly different in some way. There's like one piece of dialogue, like one word difference even, but that's different. And so therefore, but I'm not such a completionist. In any case, that's just a brief outline of where we will be getting to in the next few days. Oh, and also, of course, we're going to have a special guest for Final Fantasy VII RI Remake Intergrade, Dr. Otto Ledo from the NYU Bioethics Institute, and formerly and maybe also concurrently with the Classical Liberal Institute. And looking forward to talking with him and Wes
Yeah.
about Final Fantasy VII and its remake, and ports and adaptations. And he's a complexity theorist from philosophy who studied political economy and at King's College in London and is Finnish. I'll say all this then, but like he's a really cool cat, and I'm looking forward to what he
Interesting.
brings to this. He said his most cited paper for a long time was actually a paper on video games. So he has an enduring interest, and he has opinions on Final Fantasies and Dragon Quests, and
Okay.
I think we're gonna have a fun time.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. Written about video games. Okay.
Yeah. So we're all going to be in good company, and he's a really excited and excitable guy, and I think it'll be a very natural flow. I think it'll be very much like this plus Otto. And so when I saw him in New York about a month ago, the conversation was very natural, and he seemed very excited to come talk to us, and that always is exciting and interesting to me because
Yeah.
those are the best people to get to talk to are the people that really want to talk to you.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, my friend, thank you for letting me keep you so long. It is now 1 minute past when the Super Bowl is to begin, and I must go down and do my duty of watching the commercials there. Um, and
Okay.
thank you for accommodating my gnarly schedule today because there's Mardi Gras on one end, Super Bowl on the other. It's just a
It's
wonderful Sunday.
it's the
Uh,
big ritual in our world.
yes,
Yes. It's
yes,
time to
gotta
give it
make
its
sure
due.
that I do the dance so that the tornado keeps going around Clay Rock. I'll see
Okay.
you later, my friend.
Okay.